Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's live stream in our new slot of Tuesday evening. This is our regular slot from now on, 9 till 10 on a Tuesday. So I'm sure you'll get used to that. But welcome to this evening's show. Now, as I explained before, part of the reason we've moved is some of the people who are going to be taking part in the live stream regularly couldn't make a Wednesday, and a Tuesday suited them a lot better. And within the later slot will suit people more because you've maybe done some of the other jobs you need to do in the evening, and it's more settle down and watch and listen time at 9 o'clock than maybe it is at 8 o'clock. So this is our time from now on. We're going to go until, I think, is it the 6th of July? Then we're going to take a summer break and be back on maybe the 24th of August. So we've got a few weeks yet before we have our summer break with the live stream. Now, as usual, I'll start with just a few bits and pieces of family party news. I mentioned our conference last week. Plans are continuing for that, 13th of November. And the location, it's not quite certain, but it's looking like it's going to be in Perth. So certainly in central Scotland somewhere. But it's looking like it's going to be Perth. Saturday, the 13th of November. We've got a great venue. We'll have lunch. We're also looking to have a dinner afterwards as well. So if you'd like to stay on and have a sort of formal dinner with some speeches and entertainment or whatever, we're going to have that as well as an optional extra for our conference. So put that date in your diary. What else have we been up to? Recently, we put out a call for volunteers to get involved with the family party in our newsletter recently. So I've been spending quite a bit of time following those up. All sorts of interesting things people have come up with, various sorts of expertise or ways people can help out. So that's great. So we're trying to get those people involved in things as well. We're also working on a new project, which is creating a new suite of literature, various leaflets, booklets, all sorts. And recently, we've had our sex education leaflet, our standard leaflet, then we've got our manifesto policy documents, but we're going to have a lot more, so that when we have a street stall or a stall at an event, there'll be a real range of literature. And also, if you're a member, you can have these, a little stock of these things. And if you end up in conversation with someone, then there might be just a leaflet to give to them. I mean, for example, we're going to do one about how family party policy links to, for example, the teaching of the Catholic Church, or more broadly to Christian teaching, maybe to Islamic teaching as well. And we're going to look at some particular subject areas: assisted suicide, abortion, maybe freedom of speech, education. We're going to have a real introductory leaflet. It doesn't really say much about our policies, but just presents us some of the most general themes that we focus on. Something's put in the hand of someone who's maybe not really interested in politics, never heard of the Scottish Family Party, and it would just be a sort of warm, reassuring introduction to them. So a whole range of things we're working on. There's a team of about, I don't know, maybe 8 people, I think, working on those. Different people are writing different publications. So that's good. And we're going to launch all those at our conference as well. Now, I've been doing a lot of live streams recently. I did one last night. It was 3 hours long. I don't know if any of you watched it. It was a real marathon. That was interesting. I did another one on Sunday night as well. So this is the third night in a row live streaming. No, not Sunday night, Friday night, sorry, with some people up in Aberdeen. So there's been a lot going on. This is generally following the election. People have come across the family party during the election. So they're interested, so they get in touch and they want to find out more. And one way that's happening is through live streams. So I've been enjoying doing that. And over the next few weeks on our live stream, we'll have more guests coming on. Now, this week we've got a guest who's needs no introduction probably to most of you. Our very own Phil Tanzer is coming to talk to us about Pride Month. And we're going to have quite a long discussion about that, but that will be coming very soon. Now, I haven't made many other videos. We haven't had many other issues to raise on social media. At the moment, Scottish politics is a bit dull because if you look at what's going on in the Parliament, they haven't really got their teeth into anything. Really, controversial issues haven't come up. So we need to give them enough time to start making their mistakes and start saying and doing the things that we can then expose and show what's actually going on. So we'll just give them a bit of time for them to put their foot in it. Then we will bring to light what's going on. I mean, the one area where there has been discussion in the Parliament has been education. I mean, I will make a video on this soon. There was a big debate recently, but I'm going to wait until the OECD publication, like their inspection of Scottish education, is going to come out. I think it's the 21st of June or something like that. So I'm going to make a video then when we've got that report. But it's like watching Scottish education slowly but surely be strangled by progressive ideology. And in the parliament, as though no one can see what's happening. It's just painful to watch. So the exams have been cancelled, and now the SQA, the Scottish Qualifications Authority, I mean, they've got some clever people there, statisticians, people who really know what it means to make exams fair and how to moderate them, to try and make sure teachers don't give wildly inflated grades. But all that's out the window, because that's seen as, you're not very nice. If you want to ensure that the grades are fair and the teachers are not just wildly overestimating, then that means you're a bit of an unpleasant person. In fact, you're perpetrating an injustice on the young people of Scotland. So the Education Secretary today has promised that whatever grade the teachers say, that's the grade that the pupils will get. It's just ridiculous. The credibility of Scottish exams has fallen to bits. And as I've said, I'm not at all sure there are ever going to be exams again in Scotland after this fiasco. So the Scottish Qualification Authority are getting a real kicking, unfairly, I think. I mean, the SNP deserve the criticism. They cancel the exams unnecessarily, 2 years running. What the SQA is supposed to do if you take away their means of implementing fair exams. But also Education Scotland is also coming in the firing line as well, which again, Education Scotland doesn't really get a great deal of sympathy from us, because we criticise it on virtually every aspect of everything it does. But the criticisms the MSPs have got of it, they're very narrow and procedural. A lot of the time, I'm not sure they really know why they're criticising it. It just seems to be a bit of a bandwagon. And, okay, education's in a mess. What can we do? We need a suggestion. Okay, let's reform Education Scotland. How do we reform it? How do we want it to change? Well, don't know really. But at least it sounds like we've got some policy. So reform Education Scotland. And that's the level of debate in the Scottish Parliament. But anyway, I don't want to steal too much of my own thunder. I will make a video about that before too long. Right, one more thing to mention. If you're watching on Facebook, apparently Facebook has changed the way it deals with live streams, and you can now subscribe to Scottish Family Party live streams. So hopefully on your screen there will be something you can click to subscribe, and there will also be a bell to click so that you get notifications whenever the Scottish Family Party goes live. So I'd encourage you to give that a click now, the subscribe and the notification. And you can do the same on YouTube as well if you're not a subscriber on YouTube. Right, before I bring in Philip, who was just finishing his tea a minute ago. Before I bring in Philip, I've got a couple of quick stories to share with you. The first one has to do with Girl Guiding Scotland. Now, a couple of years ago, a Girl Guide, under the auspices of Girl Guiding Scotland, wrote an article in a publication, and it was arguing gender pay gap, stereotype, all the sort of standard feminist lines. And I retweeted it. It was actually me that did it. Other people do Twitter for the Family Party, but this was me. I retweeted it saying, this is a very political message. It's the message of the SNP. And I also note that Girl Guiding Scotland now gets funding from the Scottish government. It seems like these things are probably connected. That was my tweet. But let's say this was like months, if not years ago. Anyway, I had an email from Girl Guiding Scotland a couple of weeks ago. And it said, the girl who wrote that article is very upset about it. So can you remove that tweet in line? This would be in line with our safeguarding policies. Safeguarding, in other words, this is a sort of child protection issue in some way. So it said, can you remove the tweet? So here's my reply. Girl Guiding Scotland chose to use a child to publicly deliver a political message. We therefore have every right to disagree with that message publicly. One can't deliberately use a child as the medium for a controversial message, then use the child's status as a reason to ban disagreement in response. Our tweet was neither offensive nor personal. Your reference to safeguarding is an overreaction, to say the least. So, Girl Guiding Scotland needs to decide on a consistent policy. Either don't use children to deliver controversial messages, or do use them and accept that some people may disagree. You can't have your cake and eat it. If Girl Guiding Scotland has now realised that using children as communicators of its political viewpoints is ill-advised, we hope that you now update your policy. If Girl Guiding Scotland were to decide that, on reflection, campaigning on contentious social issues is not in keeping with its ethos and objectives, and that using children in such campaigning is morally questionable, We would welcome a decision to return to the apolitical positive values and healthy activities traditionally associated with the movement. If Girl Guiding Scotland wishes to refute our suggestion that government funding is leading to the promotion of the government's agenda through the movement, it should issue a rebuttal. So we will not be removing the tweet, and we hope that Girl Guiding Scotland can support the girl as she deals with the perfectly reasonable and inevitable consequences of her use as a political spokesperson by Girl Guiding Scotland. You may even feel that you owe the girl an apology for using her in this way. So that was our response. Their reply to that, no reply. I wasn't expecting a reply. I thought they'd probably get their lawyers on it and they'd try and kick up a fuss one way or another, but no sign of it yet. So I've just turned the comments on here. There's absolutely dozens of them. Right, I'll look at some comments in a minute. That's great. So that was Girl Guiding Scotland. It looks like that might be the end of the story, but we'll see. We'll see if anything else comes of it. The other thing to update on, I think in the last week, Dr. Neil Thin, who we expressed public support for, he was the lecturer at professor at Edinburgh University, who objected to a curfew for men from 6 o'clock onwards every night, who agreed with J.K. Rowling about transgender issues and objected to an anti-racism event at Edinburgh University in which white people would not be allowed to speak. He said he didn't think that was the best way forward. Some students complained and he was suspended for, so I would say, a number of months, but he's now been reinstated. So I've been in touch with Dr. Thin. We expressed our support and we're delighted to see that common sense has prevailed. But what do I always say in these cases? Who wants to go through that? Who wants to go through months of your name in the paper, suspended from your job, all that pressure and stress? Now, okay, someone like myself, I wouldn't say I would enjoy that, but, it will be a mixed blessing. Let's put it that way. There'll be aspects of that I would think, well, this is a good opportunity to expose just how crazy these systems are. But for most people, this is a really unpleasant experience. So the fact that he's had to go through that is an injustice in itself. And other lecturers, what will they think? Will they think, oh, that's good, he's been reinstated, I can speak out now? Or are they more likely to think, I don't really fancy having to go through that myself, I'll keep quiet? Sadly, probably a majority will think, I'll keep quiet. But hopefully there will be an increasing number who will say, right, this is the time when we need to speak up. The less people speak up, the worse the situation is going to become. Right, so just a very quick reminder. I'll just show you the projection that we did onto Edinburgh University. Right, there it was. Hopefully you can see that. So, yeah, I'm not saying our projections made a difference, but they were seen by tens of thousands of people on social media. So maybe that they did help embarrass the university just a little bit and help to push them in the right direction. Right, that was a couple of stories I've got as well. There's also a book I've been reading I could talk about later if we've got time. But let's just have a quick look at the comments before we bring Phil in. Hello, good evening. Right, some familiar names there and some new names as well. Right, welcome everyone. Where do we stand on paedophilia? A terrible crime and terrible evil. How about that? That's an easy one. Right. COVID vaccination for kids. I was asked about that in one of the live streams. I'm not an expert on this, but my feeling, and well, the family party policy is that really we've just got to get back to normal in terms of coronavirus. How much danger are children in from the virus? I mean, it seems like the risk is minuscule. So it seems like this has been dragged on unnecessarily. I mean, the point of the vaccine, you vaccinate the most vulnerable people, and then you can go back to normal. But it seems like the governments, it's not just the Scottish government, all of the governments, it's like they're allergic to good news. They're allergic to optimism. You've always got to go for the most pessimistic, fearful, careful, timid approach. And that reflects, I made a video about this a few months ago, a culture of fear. the general assumption in our society is that the right thing to do is to be ultra, ultra careful. And living in a mindset of fear is seen as that's wisdom. That's the way you really ought to be. And if you're not living in constant fear of things, and all sorts of things, then you're really a bit, you're a bit thick, really. You're really lacking wisdom. Whereas there's another side to the story. So coronavirus has come along at a point in humanity's history, certainly Western history, when there is this culture of fear and safetyism, as some people call it, that's got a grip on a large portion of the population, and it seems the governments as well. So yeah, I would certainly be inclined to, if there were going to be vaccinations for children, certainly very much optional and an opt-in system, but is it really necessary? I don't know. Right, anymore. Right, someone saying they voted for the Scottish Family Party. Thank you very much. Keep it up. There'll be plenty more chances in the future as well. Right, that's someone being a bit offensive. The comments are never complete without someone being a bit offensive. Right, make a statement on Ligma. Sure. Ligma, if I understand it correctly, is an illness, a fictitious illness in the game Fortnite. And teenagers think it's really funny to ask adults about Ligma, because Ligma, adults don't know what it is. Then they say, what is it? And the teenagers think adults are really stupid, which might be true in a lot of cases. But anyway. Right, Charlemagne, I think you're going to be banned soon. Yeah, I think, right. Bye, Charmaine. Right. Okay. Right, I'm just about at the bottom of the... Oh, that's an interesting one. SNP hate crime laws are now arresting feminists. Absolutely insane. Now, this is the story about, what would you call that? A trans exclusionary feminist, or whatever term you want to put. So someone who's objecting to the transgender ideology, objecting to the Gender Recognition Act. And the woman's been arrested and charged with, I think it's offensive communication. It's not hate crime. Well, it might be a hate crime, actually. It's not under the new hate crime legislation, because that hasn't come into effect yet. But I think there's currently a law about offensive communication, for example. And an offensive communication crime could then be classed as a hate crime, I think. But that's nothing to do with the new law that is coming in very soon. Now, I've seen this story reported, but the reporting is completely inadequate because it doesn't say what she said in these tweets. So for all I know, these tweets might have said, I'm going to come round and stab you tomorrow night. I think they probably didn't. So I'm going to reserve judgment until I know what she said, because it does seem bizarre. This case has had so much publicity and so many people have come to her defense as well. People have donated to a legal fund when it seems to me, in any case, that no one actually knows what she said. So I'll wait until see what she said, and then it's quite likely that we will be coming out publicly and saying that we're completely on her side and it's ridiculous that these charges have been brought, even if we might think that what she said was unwise or unnecessarily harsh or offensive or whatever. So we might not necessarily agree with what she said or how she said it, but it's very, very possible that we'll be coming out in support of her when we know what she said. Right. I think she posted a photo of a suffragette ribbon on the floor that vaguely made the shape of a noose. Yeah, I saw that picture as well, but that didn't seem to be the whole story. It seemed to be that people were thinking maybe that was one of them. You see, I don't actually think the police would be that stupid. Okay, I don't think they would be that mad to do that. But we shall see. Anyway, I think someone might have something to say on this. So let's say hello to Phil. Welcome.
Good evening. Hello, Richard.
Is my sound working?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, sorry.
Perfect. It's wonderful to be here again. Thank you so much for having me on. And yeah, I wanted to say something about this case because I am very vocal anti-feminist, which means I support equal rights for men and women, and I'm all in favor for the rights of women, but I don't support feminism because I don't think it's for equality. But, and this is very, very important, I fully support the right of all people, including feminists and trans activists, to speak their truth, their opinion freely and openly, as long as it doesn't advocate for violence against each other. And I think in this case, I'm absolutely backing up the right to free speech of this radical feminist. And yeah, it pains me to say that I stand with her in solidarity, unless she actually wrote something that that advocated for violence. In that case, obviously, I would not.
I mean, this is again so bipedal species. I don't know if there's one person or this is the whole species. Type in the comment in. Police are going after because the picture of a suffragette ribbon looked like a noose. I mean, is that the whole story? Have you heard that is the actual thing? I find it hard to believe that would be the whole story.
On the one hand, it's hard to believe, but on the other hand, we had many cases that are so hard to believe that I'm tending to believe it now, because we clearly live in clown world. In some ways, I almost feel sorry for the police for doing their job in this climate, but I think it's the duty of police men and women to actually stand up and say sorry, but this is not a crime. We're not investigating this.
Which the police associations, which are like I don't know if they're like unions, but the grassroots thing for police officers, some of those have objected to it, haven't they? They've said this is not the sort of thing we want to be doing. This is unpoliceable. But the thing is, probably as soon as you're involved with that, as soon as you're the spokesperson who says that, I mean, your career is stalled. At best. And to get to the top, you've got to be the yes person who's willing to go and shit. Well, it's not Hamza Yousaf anymore, but whoever's there promoting these messages. And that's a good point, Paul. That's a good point. The SNP symbol could look a bit like a noose as well.
And at the moment, this noose has the colors of the LGBTXYZ trans inclusionary flag. So are they looking for the eradication of trans people, or we don't know?
Shocking. I mean, I always think just assume the worst. Always assume that people are meaning the worst possible interpretation of what they're saying, and then that's you're pretty safe then. Airdrie Police, Glasgow Sheriff Course 20 this month. Right, but I'm tempted to go along. It would be interesting, wouldn't it? Right, okay. Right, so the format that we're going to have every week now is we are going to have a guest who's going to come on to talk a little bit about a topic that they bring along. Then we'll talk about that topic, but then often the guest will stay and will respond to questions, and that will be a large part of the show as well. So over to Phil.
So I was actually really considering, and I tried it on, one of my old so-called harnesses, which is what many gay men wear at Gay Pride. And I was thinking about actually wearing it tonight for this special. I thought it would be maybe a little bit too spicy. So I put it back into the closet where it has been for many years. Maybe I should sell it on eBay. So tonight, because this month is Pride Month. Can't believe that it's a whole month. I'm pretty sure in 1 or 2 years it's just going to be Pride Months all year round, and it's just going to be Pride Life. So because it is Pride Month, I want to talk a little bit about Gay Pride and my experiences with Gay Pride over the years. Now, I become more and more outspoken in regards to my criticism towards the LGBT community and things like Gay Pride. And I am being criticized for that on Facebook quite regularly, which is absolutely fine. And a lot of people think that my opinion has changed over the years dramatically. But even though I did attend gay pride and I was wearing a harness, my opinion about gay pride was always rather negative, and I did think that it was very much in bad taste in many ways, because many families walked past it or actually went there to watch gay pride, and it was difficult for me to deal with that. But I will get into that a little bit later. I have a bit of a structure. So I have to clarify that if there was something like straight sex pride, I would oppose that as well. I think that the public celebration of sexuality isn't great for our culture, and I think that sexuality is something that should stay in the bedroom and that shouldn't be shown in public, and most of all not celebrated by the governments and by big corporations. But if there was something like straight pride, and you could maybe say that certain events in Germany, we have Carnival, and everybody gets horribly drunk and they behave absolutely outrageous in the streets, and I don't like that either. So I never attended that, and I really disliked that because of the negative behavior on public streets. So I would say in that way I'm consistent, and I don't want to say that LGBT or public LGBT immorality is worse than public straight immorality. I would oppose both of them. The thing is, there is no such thing as straight pride where straight couples do similar things on the streets. Just wanted to clarify that. So that is not an attack against LGBT individuals. Now, during this month, you see rainbows absolutely everywhere. As I just said, the SNP has the rainbow flag. It's not even just the rainbow flag anymore. It's the rainbow flag with the extra attachment of trans pride and black and brown pride. So you see these flags everywhere, and I can't believe how fast the mainstream media adapted this new flag, which is even more controversial than the other one, because insinuates that the rainbow flag before was intentionally exclusionary of both trans people and black and non-white people, which has never been the case. So this flag becomes more and more political, and which, in my opinion, makes it more and more outrageous that big corporations and even the government uses this flag. That should absolutely not be the case. Now, even in the past, when I was a member of the LGBT community, seeing the rainbow flags everywhere made me feel incredibly uncomfortable, because I just see myself as a person. I didn't want to be singled out. I didn't want to be specifically celebrated. I always thought it was quite cringy, and I always thought that it will create a strong backlash at one point. And I thought the more you force something controversial into the lives of people, the more there will be a backlash, and I would say justifiably so. Unfortunately, I think that normal people that just happen to be LGBT will in the future pay the price for this political movement that in my opinion will create more homophobia and more transphobia. So
yeah,
last couple of days I saw quite a lot of like rainbow flags on Facebook, and what I do, with some exceptions, when I see that people that I follow or that follow me, when they have the rainbow in their profile, now I'm at a point where I just simply block them or I defriend them, because I just don't want to see it anymore. There are exceptions of people that I really like and that are good friends, and I respect their freedom of expression, and if they want to have the pride flag, that's fine. But people that I never felt very connected to, I'm like, goodbye, I don't need you in my life. But what I also see is more and more advertisement on Facebook that has LGBT people in it, or that has the rainbow flag in it. Excuse me. And one commercial, and that was actually not in direct reference to Pride Month, was from BT. BT had an advert, something about hate, like about online hate speech, and it was BT Sport, and they were like sports people, and they talked against online hate, against gender identity and sexuality and this and that. And it really annoyed me. I'm a customer of BT, and I just don't want to see all this political nonsense rammed down my throat. And I really wanted to leave BT because of that, but I thought it's just too difficult to change provider, because I would have to end the contract. And today, a company that already provides my water called me and said, oh, we're already providing your water. Would you also like our broadband and our landline? And then I asked them, do you have any political messages? Do you have the rainbow flag anywhere? And he said, no, we're apolitical. I think we make donations to some charities, but that's about it. And then I said, well, in that case, I'm going to change over to you. But please pass on to your executives, please pass on that the reason why I changed over to you is because you're not political. And I will send a letter to BT telling them that I left them as a customer because they started to do these political things.
Yeah, that's. I think that's a really valuable thing too. I think they assume that there's no risk to take in taking what they think is the popular line. That they just assume that that's good for business.
Absolutely.
They need to realize. I actually had a thing with my bank. I was with Lloyds Bank years ago, and I was doing a debate against some prostitutes, basically, some sex workers. And in my research, I came across an organization in Edinburgh. I can't remember what they're called now, but they basically advocated on behalf of prostitutes. So I was looking at now, they were the other side of the argument, and I was trying to see how to counter their arguments. And then I looked down at the bottom of their webpage. Who are they funded by? Lloyds Bank, my bank. So I've had enough. So I phoned up Lloyds Bank and said, no, that's the reason I'm going to change. So I switched. Sometimes you have the problem there. I mean, where'd you switch to? And you'd just be hopping from one to another. Endlessly, like for supermarkets. I mean, you really would be struggling at Amazon and Google. But there's a few things I'd like to come back to on what you said. It was very, very interesting. I think we're about taste, and that's a really important point. Like we're pro-marriage. So let's say there was a group that were promoting heterosexual marriage. So what they did was they paraded about, dressed in whatever sort of sexually provocative clothing, whatever. I went down the street and said, we're so proud of our heterosexual marriages. We're just trying to show them in such a positive light, show how exciting and erotic they are. So this is a good cause. Now, I would, like you, I would just say no. I don't want to see that. It's not the right context. But and I think I say the message it gives is people who believe that LGBT relationships are in some way, there's something about them that leads to some, not the healthiest form of sexuality. And I think Pride marches confirm that. And like you say, I think there's a lot of LGBT people who look at the Pride marches and think, what an embarrassment. People are associating that with me.
I will get into that in a moment.
Yeah, that's just
one.
By
the way, when you talked about your bank, I have the same problem. I'm with the Bank of Scotland, and they have outside of on their window, they have "We are proud to serve the LGBT community," and they have that sticker on all year round. And I would really like to change my bank because of that. And I did go inside and I complained about it. Now the thing is, complaining about that is always tricky. I'm in the good position that I can always say, I'm part of the LGBT crowd,
Yeah.
just to make sure I'm not a homophobe. Just don't want any political statement on my bank.
Yeah.
But I would encourage people to do that, but in the friendliest way. So never come across as a homophobe, never come across as hateful. Just say, look, I just want your bank to be neutral. That's all.
Yeah. I think probably 9 times out of 10, the person you find yourself talking to is just going to think homophobe, bad person, and probably good riddance.
Yeah.
You know, the chance of getting anyone who's going to think anything beyond that. But just something else, going back to the style of Pride events. Now, this is something I've never heard anyone talk about this, but this is my take. I'll see what you think. Often I don't know what you'd call it, the style, the design, the branding or whatever. Like if you look at a police car, if they decorate it for Pride Month, I might find it looks like, you know, a 3-year-old's cardboard plate from a birthday party. It's a really sort of childish facade that's put on. And again, I just find that curious. You think most adult movements would look at that and think, you know, that's a bit infantile. It's a bit embarrassing, really. You don't want something a bit more serious if you wanted to be taken seriously. So why do you think that is? Why is there this connection with, it's a really infantile style, I suppose.
So I would say that's the gay influence. You have the gay influence and you have the lesbian influence, and the lesbian influence is political, I would say, for the most part. And I would say more in many ways more family friendly. I do not have positive ties with the lesbian community. I find it quite toxic and very quite hateful in some ways. But at least they're not hypersexualized, where the gay aspect is incredibly colorful, in your face. People take a lot of party drugs during gay pride, and I think in many ways that's reflected. And there is obviously a big, for the media, and that I blame the media for that in some ways, because who's usually being photographed the most outrageous costumes? The drag queen. And so everything looks quite drag queenish with a lot of glitter and stuff like that. Now, as somebody who attended, and it's the same when you go to carnival, is it fun? Yes, of course it's fun. I can't deny that. If you're surrounded with like-minded people and you all dress up incredibly silly and you're all half drunk or on drugs, I'm sure. I never took drugs, just to point that out. But I'm sure that's fun. But is it a positive reflection of your community? No, not really. And the problem is that they say, or when gay pride is being attacked, they say, oh, but it's a political statement. It's like, well, but is it really? No, it's a party. It's an excuse to be as outrageous as possible, and to be honest, it's you gather together, being happy about the fact that there are a lot of people that are more degenerate than you are, because there's the guy in a dog costume on a leash with his master, and there's the naked woman just in body paint right next to you, and you're like, well, compared to them, I'm almost normal. But that's also the problem, because it normalizes quite extreme things. And again, if you want to do that at home, I don't think it's healthy for you. But if you want to do that at home, that's your choice. I don't think that we should advertise that for children, and we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Do you feel that this year it's just been toned down a little bit? It's not quite as ubiquitous.
The thing is, gay pride is something that needs to happen on the street. They have to get together. And the thing is, it's a big sex party. That's really what it is. And again, I can't talk about the lesbian part of it, but the GBT, not so sure about the T's, but it's a huge sex party. So at every Pride event, in the past, it wasn't Pride Month. It was kind of Pride season. in Germany, and every weekend you had a gay pride in a different major city, and gay people would take all the weekends off, or sometimes the whole month, and they would just travel from one gay pride to the next. And generalization, obviously that's not all gay people, but go to as many parties as possible, go to as many prides as possible. And when you go to parties, that means taking drugs and having as much sex as possible. And I'm not exaggerating. I'm really not exaggerating. People have no idea how bad it is, and I was part of it. That's how I know it. That's how I know it. There are, in places like Berlin, there are 10 different sex parties just on one night on that weekend with different topics. So you can choose which sexual perversion you want to choose. And the thing is, people don't use condoms anymore. So the doctors, after the weeks after Pride Week, it's just an explosion of STDs. And people that tell me, oh, that's just a fringe of it. No, it's not. It's the people that attend Pride, a big chunk of them does that.
Yeah, it's interesting. But then you find at these events, there'll be a stall or two from some LGBT health charity, or the NHS will have a special stall. But woe betide anyone that suggested, actually, that this is evidence that there are some unhealthy aspects of the lives these people are leading. So there might be time to reflect on that and to give advice accordingly. I mean, if anyone was even to say that, I mean, you virtually get stoned. So the negative side, it's sort of tacitly acknowledged. It's the harm reduction approach. They're trying to reduce the harms while endorsing the excesses. And the ethos that's producing the damage. It's a real contradiction. I felt, just looking at, I don't know, just my impression from looking at things online, hasn't been quite as much of a thing. Maybe I'm wrong. But it's interesting. The Conservatives put out we're supporting Pride Month, and they made their logo rainbow. But their text with it said something like, "We appreciate the contribution of the LGBT community." So what they've thought, right, what can we say that no one could possibly disagree with? I mean, do I appreciate the contribution of the LGBT community? Well, of course I do. I mean, maybe the person who comes and empties my bin is gay or whatever. Do I appreciate that? Of course I appreciate contribution of people to the community.
And even
feminism is about equal opportunities. No, it's not. Gay pride is not about appreciating the contribution of LGBT people. It's about endorsing an ideology, a philosophy of sexuality and gender, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think as a conservative people, we are in some ways between a rock and a hard place, because on the one hand, I do think the way forward for people that want to live LGBT is normalization, so that they live in committed, normal relationships. And there are many gay LGBT people that live that way, and they just want to be left alone. And you're right in saying that a lot of them don't approve of gay pride. But on the one hand, we make it hard for people that want to live a normal LGBT lifestyle, because we're not in full acceptance of that. And I have to criticize myself. I mean, I criticize. Right now, I would say I criticize almost all LGBT lifestyles because of the change that I had through my life. But on the other hand, I'm very happy that some of my best friends, they are gay and they are married. They live a really, really good life. There is no cheating, and they are very productive parts of the community. And I think we have to make our mind, do we want LGBT people to be stable parts of society? Then we actually have to applaud them for doing the right choices. I'm questioning myself there a little bit and saying,
I mean, I would be.
Yeah.
I mean, the traditional view of mainstream religions is that homosexual relationships are basically not right. It's there's a deviation from the ideal, if you like.
Mhm.
And so that would be my personal view as well, that even if there might be a case where things appear to be going really well, still overall that the net effect is not good in a
I agree.
society. So I take a different view. But the thing with that, Simon, that's not family policy.
Richard, I wouldn't even say that you take a different view, but as I said, I'm between a rock and a hard place, because that's why I said if somebody decides to choose that lifestyle, I'd rather them living a stable lifestyle than the lifestyle of drugs and promiscuity. And that's the same for straight people and gay people. Again, it's for me, that's not about the sexuality that people have, it's how you express it. And I highly criticize all the straight people that go that have sex with other partners every weekend. And I think as culturally conservative people, we need to start calling that out in the same degree as we call out the bad behaviors of the LGBT community.
Yeah, yeah. To my mind, I've got the ideal is sex within heterosexual marriage.
Yeah.
And the further you move away from that ideal, then the more, if to use a contemporary word, problematic it becomes. So, like you said, the illustration, what's better, a gay couple in a stable relationship, or a gay couple where they're, each of them is having this wild sex life with lots of other people? Well, I would say that would be worse. So it would be preferable for them to be in a stable relationship. Do I think that stable relationship is ideal? Well, far from it. I don't think so. But that brings on to the point. The teaching of mainstream religions is pretty consistent. Certainly, the Catholic Church, evangelical Christians, in Muslims, whatever, as they believe homosexual relationships to one degree or another are not right. Yet the message of Pride is basically that all these religious teachings are wrong. Okay? It's just point blank, they're wrong. So instead of saying this is something that's undesirable, it's something that should be celebrated. So it's diametrically opposed to that view. Now, it's fine that people disagree. People have different opinions on it. But the fact that the government, your BT and whoever else, a school, the NHS, they feel that they're in a position where they can take a side in that and effectively say to all, basically, people with traditional conservative values in this area, they can just say to them, you're wrong and you need to change. And we're in a campaign to try and get you to change your views. I mean, it's just bizarre that that's been allowed to happen. I think it's been allowed to happen because traditional conservative voices have been so weak for so long. Yeah, that people do actually believe that virtually everyone agrees with them.
I agree. And I'm going to say something slightly controversial, but if
that's
you...
your job.
That's correct. If you compare, let's say, a homosexual lifestyle with heterosexual lifestyle, even committed, let's say that a heterosexual lifestyle overall leads to more happiness, and I would say that that is the case. Let's compare it to, for example, alcohol or unhealthy food like fat food or a lot of sugar. You can do it, and it should be legal to consume these things, but should it be promoted by the government? Should it be promoted by corporations? And again, that's not just about LGBT people. It's also about promiscuity of heterosexual people. We should not promote, and that's in the school curriculum, we should not promote that children and young people experiment with sexuality as freely as they want. We should promote that they restrict themselves, and we should make them aware that experimenting with these things comes at a cost.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look. Trying to read my own writing here. I often make notes, but then can't read them. What does that say? Corporations. That's it. Now, I've had a theory. Partly these, if you say Apple or Google or whatever, or you're a big bank, you're a bit worried about sort of anti-globalization, anti-capitalism protesters coming and smashing your windows, because basically you're pretty ruthless in business and you just make an absolute fortune, and basically make a lot of rich people richer. So you're prime target. You've got a target on your back as far as an anti-capitalist is concerned. So how do you keep these people on side? Well, you go big on Pride Month. Costs virtually nothing, and it keeps you on side with people who might otherwise be smashing your windows.
But they still smash the window. So that's the thing. What it's hard to grasp is that even places like Starbucks, who are incredibly woke and incredibly left-leaning, as soon as there is a Antifa demonstration, the first thing they smash is Starbucks, and they smash Apple stores, even though Apple is super woke. I do not understand why these corporations don't just say, you know what? I mean, we try to cater to you. You still smash our windows. We're just gonna shut our shops in your cities, and we're gonna stop the whole wokeness.
So I think it's just the people genuinely believe it. So the people at the top of these companies, they genuinely believe. They're like Nicola Sturgeon. They believe they're on a crusade to make the world a better place, and that's the way they can do it. And they probably just solve their conscience, because they know that their companies are doing lots of things that are, the very best amoral, but this is a way of redressing the balance. But I just think it's such a coincidence. I mean, the emphasis in our world. Remember, how long do we have to go back? Is it 20 odd years or whatever? Feed the world. There's a famine in Africa, and that will be the thing that grabs the philanthropic agenda. And we need to give money because we need to feed people in Africa. There's real suffering. We've got to do something about it. But where's that gone in the world? You just don't seem to come across this. Even when you hear about like the aid budget, what's it go to? It's going towards supporting feminists in various countries. It's education for girls. Okay, that's a perfectly good cause, education for girls. But you get the impression they haven't chosen it because that's the real priority. But there might be people starving at the other end of the street, but it's always got to be in line with the identity politics agenda. And I'm sure genuine charity just seems to have fallen out of the public consciousness.
Well, I can tell a little story about charity, and I don't want to badmouth people because they were a lovely couple, but I'm a massage therapist, and I was booked for 2 massages by a really nice couple. They were celebrating their 40th and birthdays together, and a straight couple, and they were staying in the most expensive place around here. A week costs £1,000.
That's your place, isn't it?
No. I wish it was. And on top of that, they booked the massage. Later on, I learned that was actually the birthday gift from a friend of theirs. So that's okay. But we were both working for charities. One of them was a charity fundraiser, and the other one was working for a charity that provides clean water in Africa. And I mean, that's wonderful. That's great. But at the same time, I was wondering, how can you afford staying in a place that costs £1,000 per week if you work for a charity? And I was just wondering, where does all the money go to? How much money does actually end up in Africa?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose with those, you never know people's situations. I mean, maybe they've been paying a pittance, but their family's really wealthy or whatever.
That's why I said I don't want to badmouth them. I don't know the situation, but those were the thoughts that were going through my mind. But they were lovely people. So
yeah. Just going back to the mainstream, I think right back in with schools again. Now, I think in schools, how often do pupils hear things along the lines of, these are the difficulties people face in other countries, healthcare or a lack of food, water, or whatever, clean water. So what are we going to do as a school about these issues? I think instead it's more, we've booked a coach to take you all to the Pride event, to the Pride March on a Saturday. And some Scottish schools actually do that.
Yeah.
They make the banners in school, and then they take a group of pupils to the Pride events. That's quite normal, I think. In Scottish schools. Yeah.
There's a from Ellie McIntyre. He says LGBT people in the UK are generally treated well. I think their focus should be elsewhere. I have read about some horror stories in Africa and Asia recently, including people being put in jail or even facing the death penalty. Pride work may be more beneficial abroad. Generally speaking, I completely agree with that. And when LGBT people say, oh, pride is still political and gay people in other countries are being treated badly, then I just keep asking, well, how does it help gay people in other countries if you prance around in a thong, throwing around condoms? It doesn't really help the people in these countries.
Oh, I don't know. I think some of the imams and mullahs in Afghanistan, I think they could be really won over by that. I think they could watch and think, you know what? Maybe we've been wrong about this.
Probably. But in regards to LGBT people in other countries, it is actually more complex than we think, because in many cultures, LGBT people are silently accepted, and it sometimes just escalates in regards to like prison if people step out of line. I'm not saying that it's a great thing. They shouldn't be persecuted in the first place. But for example, in some Arabic countries, they have separate cinemas for men and cinemas for women because of gender separation. Well, in the cinemas for men, the men just had sex with each other, so they had to close the cinemas for men, where you just have to say, well, if you can't behave, then we have to close the cinemas.
Yeah. I think in some places, now, I will emphasize, I completely agree with you. There should not be laws against homosexual relationships, homosexual sex. I do think, though, in some countries where they have them, it's not so much that they're wanting to punish people. It's more that they're wanting it to be underground. They're not wanting any public display.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the real objective. But I say I don't agree with laws like that.
And I get that. I watched, and I know we're coming to the end, I watched a segment by the Lotus Eaters on YouTube recently, and they were talking about the issues with Islam and Islam being stuck in the past. And my comment to the video was, actually, they are protecting their culture, whether you like it or not. I have real issues with the church at the moment because the church is going so progressive that I don't recognize it anymore. And one of our viewers said that their local church has had an LGBT, a pride flag, hanging outside of the church. And that's the problem. Once you break with tradition, you don't have to hate people or you don't have to oppress people, but once you celebrate them, you open the doors to the complete destruction of your traditions, unfortunately.
Yeah. But in terms of Islam, I mean, I've debated with Muslims. I've met quite a lot of Muslims, talked about these things. I think there's a lot of Muslims in Britain and in other Western countries as well, whose values in terms of social issues would be more or less identical to mine. And some of them have said to me that they're actually quite embarrassed by what goes on in a lot of Muslim majority countries. And they say, please don't judge Islam by the goings on in some of the quite oppressive, even tyrannical regimes. So I think we need to bear in mind that there's a lot of those people. But on the other hand, the other side of the story is real as well. There are a lot of parts of the world, in Muslim majority countries, where things are not great.
Absolutely.
But again, I think framing this solution in terms of modernization, I don't think is helpful. I mean, modernization is not necessarily a good thing.
And I'm not saying that straight people are now oppressed here, because we are not, but our opinions are oppressed here. And so in some countries, the free expression of LGBT people is very clearly suppressed. But now here in our countries, the free expression of people that oppose LGBT lifestyles is also clearly oppressed. And I think, Richard, you and I, we both would prefer a free expression where you can just criticize each other respectfully.
Yeah. Right. So as usual, Phil was very interesting. It was a very entertaining chat. I think the Tuesday evening slot seems to work well. I would say our numbers are up on last week. There seem to be more people around who just spend the hour typing in offensive comments on a Tuesday. I don't know what they do on a Wednesday, but there seems more of them around on the Tuesday. Why anyone would want to spend an hour just typing gibberish into comment threads, I really do not know. But whatever, if that's what you enjoy.
I have one question to you, Richard, because I saw it early on in the chat. Do you support White Boy Summer?
It depends who they're playing.
What does it mean? Because I mean,
no idea.
The Lotus Eaters were talking about it. I have no idea what it means. So I mean, I support summer because I'm glad that it's getting warm. I'm white and I'm male, but I also support Black Boy Summer and Black Girl Summer. I think everybody should have a great summer.
It seems to be the thing. There's a bit of a fashion among those young guns to ask people about things that they're not going to know about, to expose their ignorance.
I have to Google it because I heard it before and I was like, "What is that all about?" I can't keep up with it.
Don't worry, you were cool once, I'm sure.
No, I was never cool. Believe me, I was never cool. But thank you everybody for watching and for all the comments, even the offensive one. I enjoyed reading them.
Now, Phil, when you say you were never cool, people are not going to believe you. I was never cool. People will believe that though.
No, I was never cool. I mean, I looked like a mix between Marilyn Manson and Prince. That wasn't cool. Even back then, I was just weird.
Anyway, on that profound note, we will leave it. So, right, thanks for watching, everyone. Thanks for your comments, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Right, thanks a lot, Phil. Good night.
Good night.